The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our third and final webinar of our three-part series titled Working on Your Business, Not in It. The goal and idea behind this webinar was that we understand that running a business isn't easy and growing a business can be just as tough, especially while trying to keep up with your day-to-day operations. We know that something like this can feel impossible. So the hope and goal behind this three-part series was geared towards, to gear this content towards any business owners that were looking for effective strategies and tools to achieve growth and to take their company to the next level. Now, episodes 1 and 2 focused on how to define, develop, and implement successful business plans to help you elevate the nuts and bolts of your business. Now, in episode 3 that we're going to have today, Learning to Let Go, our moderator, DeGeare of Forshaw, and our two panelists, Erin Richardson of All American Pest Control and Fred Wingate of Noosa Pest Control, are going to bring the series home with a candid discussion on what happens after the business plan has been laid out, essentially overcoming one of the most important and challenging aspects of being a business owner. That is learning to pull back from your day-to-day operations and to find ways to empower yourself and to empower others so that you can actually start focusing efforts on your business, not in your business. Now, unlike traditional webinars, this series isn't going to rely heavily on visuals like PowerPoints and narrated guide. Instead, what we're going to do is the session is going to feature more of a debate-style format between our two panelists who will be led through their conversation by our moderator. This is going to allow more of an engaging and free-flowing style of training that allows you, the audience, to participate throughout the episode. So we ask and we strongly encourage you, the audience, to participate at any point in time by submitting your questions. Now, you will notice that all of your microphones are muted and they will remain muted throughout the entire presentation. Instead, if you would like to ask a question, what you can do is submit your question in a written format, and this option can be found on your GoToWebinar control panel. You go there, you submit your question in written format at any point in time throughout the presentation, and then when we find a good opportunity to interject in the conversation, we'll go ahead and I will throw that question out to our panelists, and they can address that question for you then. All right. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our moderator, Mark, and he's going to lead the introduction and the questions from there. So, Mark, I turn it over to you, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Mike, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon, especially Erin and Fred. I've had the privilege of knowing Erin for quite a few years through different associations and meetings, and I've known Fred since he worked with Forshaw 15 years ago or so, and he worked for us for a few years and then moved on to start his own business. But I'd like for you guys just to kind of briefly introduce yourself, and we'll let ladies go first. Erin, just tell a little bit about yourself and kind of brief background on your company history and how you've gone from managing your business, working in it, to on your business. Just a brief description.
Thank you, Mark, and hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here today. First, I just want to really show some appreciation and gratitude for MPMA. As I network with other businesses across the country and other industries, I'm always reminded how amazing our industry is, and especially MPMA, which is the backbone of everything that we do. So thanks for putting this together. As for who I am and our business, we're All American Pest Control. We're based out of Nashville, Tennessee. My grandfather started the business in 1961. He was a true salesperson. And I often say, if my grandmother didn't come into the business in 1962, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. She was the systems and processes person. She did the scheduling, the billing, and she made all of his sales happen. My dad graduated from college in 1975 with a business administration background. And he came into the business then. He bought the business from my grandfather in 1985. And then I came in part-time in 2003 and full-time in 2005. And I bought the business from my dad in December of 2012. In terms of letting go and learning to work on the business instead of in the business, it was really my dad that modeled that for me. He's the reason that I am where I am today. When I came in, he challenged me. He allowed me to take risk. He is the one that modeled letting go, letting me achieve great things, stumble and fall and fail, and grow personally and professionally in the process. And so as I'm currently developing our leadership team and navigating 20 and 25% growth each year, I always look to him and how he allowed me to try new things. And now I'm working hard to allow my leadership team to grow and develop in the same way.
That's a great story. Thank you, Erin. Fred, your turn. It's hard to compete with that one. That's a great story.
I have to follow that?
Yeah.
My name is Fred Wingate. I'm with Noosa Pest Management. Totally different side of the spectrum. I started the business from scratch a dozen or so years ago after working with Forshaw and learning the pest control business from the great minds over there, T3, Tom Sr. and Thomas, as I know him, or T4 and Mark and Brian Wardwell. That crew, I didn't know a thing about bugs other than the fact that they didn't really bother me too much back then. And they taught me everything from how to help business owners understand cost of materials isn't that big of a deal if you can increase your bottom line by 0.5%. Paying 30 more cents or 40 more cents for a can of aerosol is really not that big of a deal. It was still very hard to get that through some of those business owners' brain. But so I learned from the get-go from Forshaw, and I got an economics degree from Rollins College down in Orlando, Florida. It was the easiest thing to get me through college. I'm not an intellectual when it comes to academia. But Noosa's been fun. From the ground up, I haven't met too many guys that are in my shoes. A lot of my friends and mentors are a lot like Erin, that, you know, they've either been in the family business or they've purchased a business. So I've had a lot of great mentors through the years talk to me about growth, but from a different perspective, not from going from $0 to 7 figures, but going from more 7 figures to 8 figures. So, but there's still so much to learn. So I feel like I've been able to glean from them. As far as question of working in my business to on it, just really quickly, I didn't really have a choice. I was working in my business because I did it all. I answered the phones, I dug the termite trench, I sold the job, I did the paperwork with the client back in the day. So there wasn't anybody else to do that. And then once I started getting busy enough where I had to have some help, I still waited too long because I wanted to hang on to every last dollar. I thought that was a wise decision. But as growth continued, I was just forced by making a couple mistakes here and there that I had to bring on personnel and really focus on things that I didn't do well, some of my weaknesses, and allow my strengths and the things that I did do well just continue on, but hire a team of folks around me that did things that maybe I didn't do so well, and they could come up, pull up my slack, and I could continue to drive forward. So
that's awesome. Well, yeah, Fred, a comment you made a few seconds ago kind of leads into a question I have for both of you, and kind of using the analogy of moving from the pilot seat to the navigator seat, where as the pilot of your companies, your respective companies, you are really driving the day-to-day, really heavily involved in the day-to-day activities, and heavily involved with the personnel from top to bottom. Then having to transition to moving over to the navigator seat, where you're more directing on where that your company's going, and kind of making sure that you're making the right turns, and you're going in the right direction. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you guys have had? And Erin, of course, we'll start with you, with ladies first, but what have been your biggest challenges in really kind of going from that hands-on business owner to allowing someone else to take a little control and you just more directing your team?
Yeah, sometimes it was pretty, sometimes it wasn't so pretty, sometimes it was fun, sometimes it was stressful. When I started, we were at 11 or 12 employees and just over $1 million in revenue. And when we finish our recruiting this winter to grow into the spring, we'll be at 53 employees. So it's been quite a bit of change in culture, expectations for people, our hiring process. It's been a lot. But it continues to motivate and inspire me and keeps me learning and growing as a person as well. For biggest challenges, I mean, money's always one of them. There's sometimes where you like outgrow a task and you just don't feel like you have the money to bring someone else on. And there's other times that I feel like I've just been so desperate to bring on someone else that I've just kind of put the money out there before I really felt like we had it to invest. And it's amazing that each time I've grown to that next level and brought someone in to do things, you know, with a more singular focus than I had or better than I was equipped to do it. It just seems like the results are always exponential. This has a multiplication effect with true teamwork. Other things that are super difficult are letting team members go when we've kind of outgrown them in the level. It's easier to let people go when, you know, they're just not a good fit and they stick out like a sore thumb. It's much harder when they're in a leadership position and we kind of outgrow their gifts and talents and abilities. And then the last one is really me. I have to constantly work on not wanting everything done yesterday. And so that's always a process and evolution for me to just enjoy the journey as we go and have fun along the way.
Control your sense of urgency, I guess, when it comes to having your leadership team.
Yes.
I kind of know I know how it is over here. So we have the same thing, and we've done a lot of the same things here. But you know, Fred, from your perspective, kind of coming out of a different situation, what have been your biggest challenges, kind of coming from the ground up?
Yeah, I guess I could just say ditto to Erin's comments. I mean, so much of that's applicable to me. The growth curve that we were on since inception has been crazy. So the harmony, I don't really call it life balance because there's no way to balance work and life, right? I mean, you're at work a good bit more than you're at home, but I try and at least create some sort of harmony with work and home life. I think that's been one of my biggest challenges. I got a couple kids that are 9 and 12, and one's a little special needs little guy, and man, they're busy and life's busy at home, and it's just been the first half of the career so far at Noosa, the first 6 years were really tough to because I knew the more I worked, the more money I'd put in the bank. And you know, when you're hands on, you're less than 6 guys. It's just if you can go out and grab $1,000 here and $1,000 there, it makes a big difference to the bottom line. So early on, it was just the harmony, making sure I was protecting family time, and you know, having a great partner at home has helped me, you know, realize what I need to do there. Sometimes I don't listen too well, and I need the 2x4 upside the forehead, and not necessarily in a literal sense, but maybe once or twice. But she definitely helps me stay in check there. So the life work harmony was a challenge. Navigating through that was the same thing. Erin said, getting the right people on the bus and the right seats. It makes the biggest difference. But I noticed there, even then, I would just hit the gas even harder and expect more and want it 2 days and not before, not yesterday. So it's still a challenge even to this day. I'd say, and one of the other pieces for me, challenges wise, is just diving in to the things that make the business tick. And I live by the mantra of there's not a thing that a new sale can't fix. And that's gotten me into trouble. You know, growth is one thing, but healthy growth and being profitable, you know, good friend of mine, old Thomas Viscount, back in the day, he told me a long time ago, and I didn't understand it. He said, man, Fred, I can sit on my couch and be poor and not make any money and have a lot more fun than going out and doing pre-treats for 8 cents a square foot. And I never really understood that until, you know, I did a bunch of those pre-treats at 6 cents a square foot. So really working on the numbers, and I got a great partnership with PCO Bookkeepers. I don't mean to do a commercial for them, but truly transitioning to them a handful of years ago, being able to bounce my numbers off of industry metrics, and you know, sometimes those are applicable, sometimes they're just a nice guide. But building those partnerships, and I've been doing all my business with Forshaw, due to the relationship, and there's just so much commonality there with Thomas and how he runs his business, and what I can glean from him as far as what he knows from the industry, and Mark and Brian and all those guys there. So it's forging those partnerships and making sure you continue to foster those relationships. That's been huge for me. So yeah, that's a lot. Sorry.
No, that's great. And thank you for the plug. That's definitely not necessary, but thank you very much for that. Erin, you had some family challenges as well, and you have some. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that and how that kind of has affected the transition that you've had to make and how you managed it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's a little personal, but I'm happy to share. First of all, backing up a little bit, when I came into the business and started working with my dad, it was a really flat organizational chart. It was him and then kind of everyone else. And so we worked together pretty closely and started brainstorming and strategizing together. And that was a lot of fun. I remember one moment, and my dad and I have talked about this a lot. We were sitting in his office at the time, and we were working and strategizing and coming out with some big plans and setting some big goals. And in the most appreciative way possible, he looked at me and he said, "Erin, I have never trusted anyone fully in business and until now, and I trust you." And while he was thanking me, and I took it as a thank you, it hit me so hard then that if I wanted to continue and grow, I had to trust other people to help me run the business. And I couldn't do it all by myself. And I couldn't wait till my kids came in the business one day, if they ever did. And so that's been kind of like a marker in my journey to make sure that I'm continuing to trust people and grow together with others, and that it's really a group effort. It's not an Erin effort. And so the next turning point that kind of bookends this is I was pregnant with my third son. Brooks is 9, Reese is 6, and what is now almost 3. But so 3 years ago at 26 weeks, my water broke, and I lost every bit of my amniotic fluid and was in the hospital. Luckily, I was not in labor. Miraculously, I was not in labor, and I was able to sit in the hospital bed overlooking all the cranes of Nashville and the high rises, and just sit there for 3 weeks, hoping not to go into labor. Whit was born at 29 weeks, and then we were back and forth to the NICU for almost, a little over 2 months, actually. And then when we got home, we thought, the journey was over naively, and it was actually even more difficult after we got home than while we were in the hospital. And so a few days after my water broke and my new reality set in that I was going to be sitting there in the hospital for a while, hopefully sitting in the hospital for a while, Dad called and he was like, "Is everything okay?" And he was trying to just make sure that I was calm and everything was good and not worried about the business. And he hadn't been in the day-to-day of the business for quite a while at that point. And he was like, "I can go by the office every day and I can take a look and I can check on things." And it was just as clear as day. I was like, nope, I've been developing this leadership team with a purpose for a while, and now's the chance to see how they do. And so I did not step in the building, in our office building, for over 6 months. We rolled out our first branch. We completely transformed our business into completely digital, no paper, and we continued to grow just as much as we always do. And so it was just a vote of confidence for my leadership team. They were able to take the reins, fill in all the gaps where I would have normally been. And I actually learned during that time that in many cases I was the problem and I continued to be the bottleneck despite my hope and vision to continue to develop them. I was clearly able to see when I was a bottleneck and when I enabled them. So they all really stepped up, and we have a stronger team because of that experience now.
That's fantastic. And that's kind of what I wanted to kind of get to. And in talking to a lot of business owners that we deal with and that I interact with, I think there's and it's understandable, just a fear of letting go and letting someone else take care of your baby, of your child that you help to bring up and raise, meaning your company. And I think I see a lot of people who are just scared to death to take that step back. So, as you take that step back and kind of develop your culture, Fred, can you kind of talk about the culture that you're trying to develop there amongst your leaders, and kind of, how you're trying to position them and to work to their strengths, which are generally your weaknesses? So,
Sure.
yeah, if you could talk about your culture a little bit and how it's affected that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd say, people talk about what metrics you look at and what are you watching. There's there's the ones that you hear from in the last webinar that MPMA had that was great. Donnie Shelton and some of the other guests were talking about some of those key numbers, and that's awesome. But I'm a kind of old-fashioned, seat of my pants kind of dude, and I'm plugged into my guys, and if I'm not, I change it pretty fast. But I like to know what the feel is out there. Are the guys feeling like they're overworked? Do we need to take a snowboard trip up the beach mountain together and ride in the van for 2.5 hours and talk, and then get crazy on the mountain and get back in the van and talk some more just to build some camaraderie? It's that culture that's super important to me, because I truly feel like the level or the employment environment that we have, the team member environment that we have, quickly gets translated over to the client. So if we create the best possible working environment for our team members, then they're going to be happy. They're going to be a positive reflection of what we want Noosa to be to our clients. So it's always been super important to me. Culture is hard to kind of put your finger on. People being happy is one. I guess that's a generalization, but I like to try and spend time, and that's the number one thing. I mean, you go to any executive's office, go and talk to anybody, everybody's busy, right? So carving out time when you pass that team member in the hallway and they look down, ask them what's going on, and actually genuinely meaning the question and then taking the time to listen. Typically, I have found that those types of interactions are what continues to gel and bring our culture together. I've deemed our general manager, who's been with me almost from the get-go. He was working with us at Noosa back in those college days, but his title is general manager, but I lean on him to be the glue, because I can't still be everything to everybody from a culture perspective. So I count on him to make sure that he's plugged in and he keeps everything going, and he keeps the culture centered around what we want it to be. So it's really important to us, because our clients are super important in doing the right thing to them. So if we don't have the right folks on the bus, that affects the culture as well. So we act very quickly. Everybody knows that it's the hardest thing to do is find talent in this environment. So it's tough to say I've got to let somebody go, because it's going to be really hard to find somebody. The money that you've got tied up. But man, if that's one thing I learned, I think good old Burns Blackwell at Terminex in Greensboro, he taught me a long time ago. He said, Fred, of course he probably didn't use these words, but he said, or maybe it was his dad, Hardin. He said, if there's somebody that's creating an issue in your culture, in your company, you've got to act quickly and make sure that you take care of the issue and move on. And sometimes that's really hard in those first few years of growing, when I only had a few people helping me. I mean, I had to fire my own mom out of the office because it was just creating a serious issue. So I didn't fire her, but we separated on terms. But I think I did fire her. But those are tough decisions to make. But it's the responsibility is to your clients and to your other team members is to keep that culture healthy. So it's super important to me. I've got 40 plus people coming to my house tonight for our company Christmas party, and we could go to a restaurant. We've been uptown into Charlotte. We've done the white tablecloth thing, but I like getting people together in a social environment where we can continue to get to know each other and share and create memories and make it a more focus on our actual culture. So
that's great. And let us know what time, Fred, and I think you'll have another 30 or 40 people join you tonight. So you might want to stop by the store on your way home and get some more stuff.
You got it.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. So, Erin, I mean, talking about that, when you came back after the challenges that you had, how did that tighten up your leadership group? I know you said that everybody they tended to step up. I mean, was that the result of kind of really being forced to pull back completely? Obviously, you put the right people in the right seat on the bus, but was that the kind of the byproduct of you fully pulling back?
Yes, when we say pull back, it's almost like every year I grow to a different position within the company, either something that's not being done yet because we haven't grown to that point, or something that we can do more fully. And so what I've noticed over the past few years, and we actually are going through this right now, is it's actually become a process that every fall, when we're looking at new growth for next year and what new positions that we can add, we've hit a point in revenue and people that we're not just adding frontline people anymore. We get to add specialists that can help us get better results. So that allows us to now talk about growth as growth and opportunities for our people. And we can really hone in on what Dan Sullivan calls unique ability. And so we can really look and coach our people for more personal development along with professional development, which goes perfectly into what Fred was talking about with team experience. My biggest fear in stepping away was just that middle managers, it's a tough job when you're trying to reach goals through people, and you've been a peer and then you've stepped up to this new role. And so we found a lot of clarity around prioritizing team experience over customer experience, which is exactly what Fred was nailing on the head. And so that gave our leaders a lot more focus around what their roles were. Yes, they had management tasks of staffing and scheduling and billing, but more importantly, their main focus was the team experience. And then our team's main focus is the customer experience. So it's all just there's a synergy when everybody keeps moving into the right place within the company.
Right. And when you mentioned finding someone, a specialist, what was the first person you wanted to add when you realized that maybe that position was not a strength of yours and you needed to bring someone in? And kind of what was I would imagine that's somewhat traumatic to think, man, like your dad talked about, you have to find somebody you trust. What was that first person you brought in that you felt made the biggest difference for you to be able to step back and focus on leadership rather than management?
Yeah. So I did it a little bit different. When we got to the point where it was time to kind of hire a general manager, because I was serving that role, we knew that we were going to grow the heck out of this thing. So the thought of putting one person in that spot, I knew my strengths and weaknesses, and I knew that bringing someone else in would have a whole different set of strengths and weaknesses too. And so I had a lot of committed people that were the right fit and lived and breathed the culture of All American and wanted more growth opportunity. It took longer, but I selected 5 individuals and they each took a different part. So one was inside sales, one was outside sales, overall operations, service, and then quality and safety. And this was all in place, probably about 6 years ago. And there's no way that I could have made them all work on the business right away. Our revenues definitely wouldn't have supported that. But so we started with all 5 of them working about 25% on the business, and they still had about 75% of their time spent front lines, whether it's on the phones or in the field. And then every year for the past 6, 7, 8 years, we've gradually moved them to 50% on the business, 50% in the business. And then just within the past year, we've actually got all 5 of them 100% on the business, not in the business. So it was painful at times because it was a gradual process. Sometimes I was ready for them to step up more before they were, and sometimes they were just done and ready just to move fully into that new role. But it honestly let us develop a stronger foundation because we were all kind of learning it together and figuring out how we were going to structure our business for growth. And it gave us more time for ebbs and flows and tweaks and adjustments along the way.
Okay. Fred, can you kind of speak to that in one of the first areas of your business where you felt like you had to let go to be able to continue to grow? And you know, I've always had this thought, and I think it's in some of the leadership books, but you know, managers manage processes and leaders lead people. So when you're going from that manager and managing all the processes on a day-to-day basis to going and leading people, what was the first position that you decided you had to have to kind of fill that gap that you couldn't fill?
I think it's a tough question for me to single one out. I'll take the political answer and say there's a few. I had a great gal wander in the office for our front lines ladies are called client services specialist, and she came in for that role and quickly moved up, and now she handles all the ARAP and payroll and all that good stuff and billing. And I think that was key because, as I mentioned before, I was out kind of shaking the bushes, making it happen, keeping the guys rolling. And if that person behind the scenes is not sending the bills out and keeping the numbers squared away in the software and just managing that process, you know, that can, it doesn't matter what you throw up against the wall. If people aren't going to pay for it, you might as well not be doing it. So that was a key partnership that came walking in the door years ago. But also at the same time, I truly feel like, you know, letting go, I don't know that that's a great word that I would use for it. I say share the responsibility and have somebody that's accountable for it. So I guess that is letting go. But my general manager, he's basically an extension of my brain. He can finish most of my sentences. He knows where I'm going most of the time. We do butt heads very well at the same time. We try not to publicly, but that role, having somebody there that understands your vision and understands your focus is not just about the numbers and the sales. You still have to take care of the people, and you've got to have a great team. I think that was huge for me because that allowed me to say I was comfortable at that point. I trusted him. I trusted my behind the scenes numbers person. So that really allowed me to start to pour into my team. And and people ask me all the time, they're like, you know, what does success define that? Are you making a lot of money? And honestly, I think if you continue to do well by others, if you continue to coach and to help people develop and get to the next level, whether that's at Noosa or whether that's if they go on and do something else, if the time that you have with them, if you continue to help them, give them the resources, offer them whatever you can, I think that comes back tenfold. And as far as any other kind of benefit that you're looking for. So I've really tried to pour into our team and see whether that's giving books out and helping people understand, you know, personal debt and personal finance. I got a little bit of background in financial services, but I'll tell you, anybody listening right now, you know, you can kind of sort of say what you want about Dave Ramsey. It's, you know, he throws Jesus around a lot, which, you know, some people say that's good, some people say that's bad, but the dude is spot on about debt. Back in the day, I couldn't get enough debt. I loved debt. It got me out of bed in the morning. It actually, the higher my knees were going, meant that was how much more debt I had. I was cranking through some debt, and I thought that was cool because I could continue to cash flow it. You guys know what I'm talking about, but eventually a few years ago, I realized that having debt and understanding, you know, how you have all this growth throughout the year, and then at the end of the year you have no money in the bank and you've maxed out your lines of credit. You know, what's going on here? So, you know, having the resources of I've been involved in Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership Program for a while. It's phenomenal. Having that coaching and being able to take that from him to me and our business, and then helping the folks understand it from a personal side. And once folks see that you're in it for more than just what can I get out of this person today to make Noosa more profitable. If your heart's in the right spot, man, that company culture, it just kind of takes care of itself. And if the folks don't realize it's important, they typically work themselves, onto something else. So I've really personally enjoyed more than growing from $0 to we're going to hit a couple million this year, and we're about half the size of Erin. We've got 20 plus or minus full-time folks. So more than that, success to me is really watching folks grow and develop. And I sat in a team leader meeting this week and watched us hash out some pretty tough topics. But three of the folks in the room started day one a handful of years ago out working a route and just cranking work out, and now they're leading the company, and to listen to their conversations. That's what motivates me now. That's what gets me going, is to see that development and to be honored to have a part in the process with that type of growth with those folks.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I definitely get a lot of satisfaction, and I get a lot of satisfaction personally out of seeing you be successful, having known you for so long. So, and knowing some of your team members. But that was actually one of my questions is, I mean, how satisfying is that to watch some of your leaders grow within your company and then influence the other leaders, potential leaders in the company, as they continue to bring people up and they continue to go from working in the business to on the business, like Erin said, and bringing that next level of leadership up. So, I mean, Erin, you have a large leadership team with the size of your company, and I would imagine that has to be a close-knit group that really works well together.
It is. It's great. It's great fun. It's yesterday, actually just within the past 3 months, we've restructured our leadership positions and we added 8 mentors. And so the last 3 months we've been doing just kind of leadership development training and huddles, and the amount of energy and excitement when we rolled out our 2019 goals yesterday and the way they were even challenging me on the goals was just so rewarding and such a breath of fresh air that they are completely all in. They are all in it together. We're all working toward the same goal, and it wasn't always that way. It's been a gradual journey and a process, but just sticking with the mindset that Fred just described and continuing to put the team first far outweighs any of the financial rewards, for sure.
I totally agree. And, I guess what I would like for our listeners, our current listeners and future listeners, to kind of get out of this is, don't be intimidated by, letting go of some of the day-to-day control, which can be difficult when it is your baby and you've built it from the ground up, or in your case, Erin, have really had a lot of explosive growth. Just being able to step back and find the right people, build those relationships, and turn it over to them, and then just monitor the results. So when it comes to monitoring the results, and I know in the second webinar they spoke about key metrics that they're looking at, but I'm just curious from your perspectives and the metrics that you guys are really looking at on a daily basis or a weekly basis. What is your time frame, and what different things do you look at to kind of maintain that level of oversight and control that you can have it as the leader? Erin, do you want to start on that one?
Sure. In 2013, I had 4, and this might be something others want to explore as well. It was a great experience. I had 4 other business owners in the pest control industry come to my business, and they interviewed every single one of our employees and gave us they basically told us from our team's perspective what was going on and what impact it was going to have in our business. And from that, we realized that a lot of our team was on the verge of burnout, and that we weren't quite staffing for the spring. And And so I made a commitment after that we would be done at 5 o'clock every day, maybe 5:30. And that if we were going to grow this, we weren't going to grow it at the expense of our health and relationships. And that's taken on a whole life of its own and a whole culture of its own as well. But from that, we developed a report. It's a goals and capacity report, and it details out like what our growth goals are, our one-time customers, our additional services, our long-time customers, and then how many team members we have. And we can basically plug it all into this one spreadsheet now and see exactly if we reach all our goals and if we get all our work done by the end of the month, how far ahead or behind we're going to be. And we can project and predict very, very accurately now at the end of the month. And so it pulls in a lot of key metrics kind of into one ratio, and we live and breathe by this report now. And it really helps us, again, to make sure that we have meaningful work and also time for those meaningful relationships, and that we're not growing at the expense of profits, and we're not growing also at the expense of our health and well-being.
That's fantastic. Hey, Fred, kind of talk to me about your metrics and what you like to view just to make sure that everybody's on point and the business is going the direction you want.
Erin, it's hard to follow that. I'd like to hit the ditto button on that. That's awesome.
I'm happy to share.
I tell you, such similar stories, Erin and I, although different scales, but that's the danger with anybody that grows at double-digit rates. We haven't missed the mark on 25% for very many of our 13 short years, or more than that. It's just very difficult to run a business once you get to $1 million or so, and then continue that growth and not have a great plan. And I've never been the best plan. I'm just, like I said, I've gone out. If we're at 30%, we need to be at 40% growth for the year. I can make that happen, no problem. As far as staffing for it and planning well, that's what I have now tasked and lean on my team leaders to help me with, because that's one of my weaknesses is, I don't expect my guys to do anything that I wouldn't do. I've done it all, and I won't send them anywhere that I wouldn't go. But at the same time, you can't base your work performance on how you expect everybody else to work. And that's what Erin's talking about, is that health of folks in the burnout piece. I would hate to see that survey done at Noosa right now, because coming out of a monster year and a huge August, September, October for us, that would be an ugly survey for me. Which that's a great slap in the face, is to say, hey, how are we going to plan for next year? Because the same thing is going to happen next year most likely. So, what metrics do I watch? The normal ones. Tech labor is one of my biggest pieces. I'm on the phone every month with the guys at PCO Bookkeepers, and we're diving into my P&L and just looking at it and saying, okay, what's going on? How's it looking based off of the budget that we created this time last year? And I can tell a lot by that, because if those guys raise their eyebrows and say, how are you growing your bedbug heat treatment work this much? And I explain it to them, and then I realize, I've got two guys that are working 13, 14 hours a day and have been for 90 days. That's the point that I realize, because those guys are going to put their head down because they know that I would do it. So they're going to keep doing it, but that's not necessarily always healthy, and that's not sustainable. So we're really looking at 2019 differently. We're looking at, one, net profit. I want my bottom line number to increase by a certain percentage. And two, sustainability. We're looking at really simplifying what's going on at Noosa. Gone are the days where if somebody wants something done, we'll figure out a new service code, enter it in, charge them a decent price, and do it, and then just figure it out later. That's just not a good policy to go through. And in the first 6-7 years of Noosa's inception, that's how we did business. So trying to clean that up, and that really what that does is that takes care of the team too, because it helps them understand, hey, this is a lot simpler than it used to be. It's not so off the cuff or shooting from the hip. but going back to that culture piece, my guys and gals, the team members, they will tell the team leaders what's going on. If they're overworked, underworked, don't like the way the business is going, anything like that. Typically, we're pretty plugged in from that perspective. So I like to keep my ears on the street.
You have to. You really have to stay in touch with your team. Before we open it up to some questions, I just I want to get you guys to look ahead 5 years from now. And I know you both have incredible growth and are definitely heading in the right direction. But where do you guys see yourselves in 5 years and your company and your teams? I know we talked about in the earlier webinars about a 5-year plan. So what's your vision for All American, Erin?
Well, we were just talking about this yesterday. We'll double in size in 5 years. My business coach actually in October just tasked me to delegate every single responsibility I currently have within the company and begin working on higher strategy, bigger collaborations and partnerships, and also spending a lot of time working and learning about financial strategy right now so that we can continue to grow. So I feel like our future is bigger and better for our team and our customers, and I'm more energized and excited about the next 5 years than I even have been the last 10.
That's a great plan. And I tell you, having a business coach that will put that on you and that had to be I don't know, I probably would have thought, what the heck do you want me to do again?
Yeah, it took me about 3 days to fully grasp what he was saying. And I don't really have any daily, weekly, monthly recurring tasks now. So for me to take everything that I'm doing now and come up with a strategy for a forced letting go, I've now accepted the challenge, and you can check back in with me in about 3 months and see how I've done.
Oh, I will.
Absolutely.
Hey, Fred, can you look ahead at Noosa and the great things you've done in the past so far, and where are you looking to be 5 years from now?
Yeah, if you know me, spend much time with me for very long, you know that one day you might get one answer, and a couple days later you might get another answer. But I'd say 18 months ago I would have told you I wanted to be in a handful of new locations, and at a certain dollar amount, doubling the size. But now dialing that back, looking at it, we're hanging onto our bootstraps, just trying to stay in the Charlotte metro area, just because there's so much business out there, and there's so many folks out there doing it a different way than we are. So that market share, it's right there. It's teed up for us. We just gotta make sure we continue our marketing plan and make sure we keep feeding that machine. So in 5 years now, how I would answer that is I want to be launching more people, or more team members, into the next level and realizing their potential, and continuing to help them see that their potential is actually farther. They can continue to raise their expectations of themselves. So that being said, I would just love to see our company be able to pick up twice as much revenue, but do it in a more efficient way, and at the same time bringing on folks that line up with our culture and that are willing to. We call it Eagles. My business mentor, he's big on the word Eagles. He says, Freddie, you're going to surround yourself with Eagles, you're going to surround yourself with donkeys. And sometimes he doesn't use that term, but really trying to say, when you're sitting down with folks and you're thinking about adding them to the team, you're thinking about, okay, the next short term of my life, I'm going to be pouring into this person, or our team leaders are going to be pouring into this person. Is this an Eagle? Is this somebody that we want driving our mission and vision statement every day and going out and doing what we do? And I think that's really helped me too. And it's not that I'm not a Donnie Shelton, watching a lot of the metrics and a lot of the numbers. I definitely do that. But at the same time, I also I like the big picture piece. I love to have fun, man. When business gets so overwhelming and it gets so hard and it seems so difficult, at some point you gotta look at yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing? Is this worth it? I'm going to, potentially die of a heart attack. I'm 43. I could, in 10 short years, it could be it. And that is not where I want to be. So I'm trying to keep it fun, and really look at the big picture on seeing, how many folks, that we can, like I said, continue to launch into the next level of their, reach their next level of potential. So.
That's awesome. It sounds like you both have the same vision in mind, concerned about your team and elevating them to their fullest potential. And obviously, when you continue to do that, and that is a focus for you and your business, you're going to continue to be successful. Your customers will see that. There's no doubt about it. Just wanted to take a few minutes to open it up to any questions we may have. I see we have quite a few attendees, but also for those that are going to check in later and listen. So if you guys have any questions you'd like to ask of Erin and Fred, please enter those. We'll give you a few minutes to do that.
Yeah, we've got some questions on standby now, Mark, and we've only got a couple minutes left before our hour's up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into these really quick, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes, sir. Let's jump in.
Okay, so the first question is, I'm going to ask these a little bit out of order because I'm going to save what I think may be the most interesting question to answer for last. But what is the first steps that you would take to start or to build a sales team? And Erin, we can start with you and then follow that up with Fred.
Okay, so starter builder sales team. We had Grace, I think, outline your sales process. So whether you need a mentor or a coach or a fellow business owner that has been there before, identify your target market and how you're going to generate your leads. Make sure that all your team members are saying the same thing across the board, and just get really clear about who you are, what you're offering, and what your price is. And to me, that's the very first step.
I love it. Is that to me?
Yeah.
Man, again, ditto. Those are great comments. I'd say the only thing I would add to that is step back. Our general manager at Noosa, he loves to throw the thing upside down and toss it upside down. So, okay, begin with the end in mind, right? So, what's the point? You're trying to add revenue. Okay, how much revenue are you looking to add from a salesperson? Well, you're like, well, I don't know. It depends on the salesperson. No, you have to have a number. You got to figure out how that's going to happen. And that way, when you're building a sales team, if you're talking to somebody that says, yes, I can contribute to Noosa, I know that I can make this an awesome place I can bring on business. And you can say, okay, great. Well, these are my monthly expectations. This is my annual expectation, broken down by month. These are the monthly expectations. So this is what you're going to have to do every week. This is the activity that's required to make that happen, because it's just a machine, right? It's not, I mean, I guess it is science. It's not rocket science, but they've got to knock on a certain number of doors. They've got to make a certain amount of phone calls. They've got to be a member of a certain amount of networking groups to be able to generate these leads. And if you say that and then you shut up and look at the person in the interview process and they look at you like you're crazy, well, then you know you're probably not going to need to talk to them very much longer about building your sales team with them being a member of it. So
that's
really
absolutely true.
Really understanding where you're coming from, because everybody, and I will say, and Erin, I don't know if you'll attest to this, but Mark has actually managed me. He's been a sales manager up, so he can tell you that salespeople are the hardest people to manage. I feel like, because they're the best at telling you what you want to hear, and they're extremely convincing, and they can punt the ball down the road better than anybody else. So you've really got to have your game face on. There's a company locally that I think they just about sell everything over the phone. Termite work, everything, and then there's some state regulations that they tiptoe around, but that's, they've turned it upside down and said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but we're going to win more than we're going to lose, and I don't have to manage a sales team or a sales manager or salespeople. So there's all different ways to skin the cat. So I'd really urge you to kind of start with the end in mind and look at what you want.
All right, great. So again, we've got just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to try to hammer through two more of these really quick for you. The first one is you both spoke a little bit to metrics and measuring those goals and standards. When it comes to profit, and you do find that your profit does fall short, let's say 3 to 5% lower than whatever your standard or goal is that you've set, where do you first typically look to find out what's happening? And again, we'll start with Erin, then turn to Fred.
That's a great question. The way that Fred talked about starting with the end in mind for salespeople, I think to prevent this from happening in the future, you would start with the end in mind for your budgeting and planning for the next year. But things will always, things will always not hit the mark, and some things like this will happen. One, you can look at the efficiency of your marketing in pest control. It's really a quantity game because we're usually dealing with low dollar volume. So you can look at the efficiency of your marketing. You can look at the efficiency of your salespeople. But most of the time, it comes down to your routing and scheduling and your productivity and efficiency of your service team is where you're going to find they are the profit generators of your business. It's your service team.
Yeah, I'm not going to waste any time. Oh my gosh, did you just read that out of Erin's book of cost of goods sold P&L analysis? That's awesome. Yeah, it's all about. That's what this business is about: is managing that labor force out there doing the services, bringing in the revenue. So, efficient routing tool, whatever software you're using, someone may not be utilizing it to the extent that it could be. And you can also heal a lot of wounds by increasing your prices too. You can continue to operate inefficiently, and if you increase the prices by 30%, you're going to sleep a lot better at night.
Okay, great. All right, so I saved this one for last. We've got about 2 minutes left, so each one of you feel free to share your answer to this. When you find that a family member, so mom, husband, wife, brother, is not on the bus, as you indicated earlier, how do you graciously let them go? Erin, we'll start with you, and then we'll let Fred follow up.
So it's always polite to do ladies first, but this one's probably the most difficult. I have luckily not been in this situation. My brother is on my leadership team. He does not have ownership in the business, though. And there was a time when he just wasn't really sure who he was or what he wanted to do in life. And he was in the company, but he wasn't quite sure of his path and contributions to the company and wasn't really in the right place. So we just really started out with those conversations, and it took time. And I was prepared that if it got to that point and progress stalled, that we would have to let him go. I probably would have brought in some third-party people before doing it, just to make sure that I was on check, that I wasn't holding him to expectations, that I wasn't holding other people to, that I was listening to his point of view. So I probably would have brought in I'd actually thought about it, brought in a third person that could kind of coach me and coach him and see if we could get on the same page. But it worked itself out, and he is the most amazing leadership team member. He is all in. He is learning and growing all the time now. And so we were able to navigate it, though at times it was probably one of the most difficult things that I've gone through.
Yeah, just really quick, I'll say that we utilize the DISC profile, behavioral bias. We've got these modules in this testing that we do that measure emotional intelligence, everything from conflict management to communication styles. So every single one of our team members, we know how they like to be communicated with, and we know what their strengths and weaknesses are as far as conflict, and emotional intelligence is huge. If I would say one of the best things to do outside of reading Dave Ramsey, talking to PCO bookkeepers, and the next thing is learning as much as you can about emotional intelligence and how to coach people to increase their emotional intelligence levels. because if you're dealing with somebody in the family member that they're never going to get it and they're not going to understand, you just need to make a swift, quick change. And I'm not the best at taking time and being patient about it, so I'm going to make it happen pretty quickly. But if you have the right heart about it, and if you tell them, hey, listen, I want what's best for you, our clients deserve what's best for them, and this is how this is going to roll out. And I'd be more than happy. I've already lined up 5 different lunch appointments for us to go talk to different people that have potential places for you to get on board their bus. But it's not going to, today's your last day. So I'm just a little more abrupt and move on. And because I've only got so much of my time and my emotional resource for folks. And if they're not the ones for it, I'm certainly going to have the right heart about it, but it's time to move on.
Man, difficult question, but fantastic answers. I don't know how I would have handled that myself. So thank you guys so much. Unfortunately, I think that brings us to the close of the session, and I really wish that we could get to the rest of the questions that we had. So if there were the questions that we didn't get to today, I strongly encourage everybody, reach out to Mark, Erin, and Fred. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to provide you answers to any of the specific questions you had, addressing some of the content that they reviewed. And special thanks to Mark for helping to put all this together and to moderate today, for Erin and Fred giving up so much time, the 3 of you, for being so candid and honest and open about some of the challenges and struggles that all 3 of you have been through in starting your business and continuing a family business. This was very revealing and very eye-opening for a lot of us, including myself. I learned a lot today, and this was very enjoyable. I can't thank you 3 enough for being a part of this. This was a fantastic close to a really great webinar series, and it couldn't have gone any better. So a special thanks to all 3 of you. And for everybody that's in attendance today, I appreciate you all giving us your time. Now, for any NPMA members out there, this recording will be available of this entire webinar, as well as the other 2 episodes 1 and 2 of this webinar series. Those will all be able to be located in our on-demand series section in the NPMA Resource Center website under our online training resources. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or any one of our speakers about this. But one last time, Mark, Erin, and Fred, thank you all so much for being a part of this, and thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you again on our next business webinar series.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thanks to NPMA.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a happy holiday.
You too. Bye-bye.